Well, France is about to have an election. And as we see in the campaign, we had Marine Le Pen characterize it this way. She said, this election is about a choice of civilizations. We are at a crossroads. She said the division is no longer between the right and the left, but between Patriot and Globalist. And that is exactly right. As some people in Germany have called it, it is a decision when we look at these open borders, these mass migrations that are being encouraged by the globalist, it is a great people replacement. So do the people who are in these areas want to retain their culture, retain their sovereignty, or are they going to be replaced? And of course, one of the reasons that the globalists want to do that is because they want a soft kill. They're going to move to a situation where all the population is going to be heavily controlled, heavily concentrated. They're going to have automation replace the jobs. They won't really need us because they won't need slave labor in third world countries. They won't even need slave labor in our country. They'll have robots to replace us. And of course, the term robot originally meant slave. That's where the robot came from. It was a Slavic name. But they want to be able to divide and conquer the peoples in the areas in the West, in Europe and in America, the people that could mount an opposition to the globalist takeover. So when we look at the Davos man, these people who talk about the fact that they have no allegiance, no affinity for any nation, they see themselves as globalists who are above and beyond ordinary people. They want to have a soft kill. And the way that they can do that is to have a divide and conquer, a kind of Tower of Babel situation. Now, this is the way the French presidential candidate described it. She said she blasted globalization, Islamic fundamentalism in her closing speech Sunday on a two-day National Front Party conference. She called Islam and globalism two totalitarianisms. And that is precisely what they are. We have to understand that they're two totalitarianisms, but they're working together in the same goal. You say one is a tool of the other. That's the way Islam is being used. She said, we're at a crossroads. She asked she said, I have 3 children. They're young citizens. Will your young children have the rights and the cultures of our current generation? Will they even speak the French language? She unveiled 144 commitments and an agenda that envisions a France that is unshackled from the European Union and from NATO, and that ensures work, healthcare, and other services for its own citizens, along with drastically reduced immigration. She told the crowd that globalization is erasing France and that Islamic fundamentalism is planting itself in neighborhoods and in vulnerable minds. We're going to give you an example of this. As she's doing this campaign speech, there are another massive riots that are happening in Paris that recall riots of 12 years ago in 2005. So we're going to tell you about that in just a moment. She said, when you arrive in a country, you don't start violating laws, demanding rights. But of course you do if that is the intention of an invasion. And that's the way this is being set up by the globalists. They're using this as an invasion, not just with Islam, but a massive replacement of the people who are coming there, different cultures, and especially Islam is useful because, as we're going to see in France, the people who come in create their own ghettos. They don't want to assimilate. They don't want to mix with other people because of religious reasons, because of cultural reasons. So they create these ghettos that become poor. And the second generation is far more radicalized and dangerous than the general population that came in at the beginning. Of course, you're always going to have some undesirables that are going to slip in, terrorists that are going to work their way in with genuine refugees. But when you have the second generation that grows up in these ghettos, they are easily radicalized. She said one of her 144 commitments is to limit immigration to just 10,000 and to restrain family reunification policies that allow many immigrants to bring in relatives. In other words, what we call here in America, the anchor baby situation. Her top lieutenant said earlier on Sunday that Brexit and the Trump election have given the French a reason to vote. You understand that? They've looked at Brexit just as we did. Brexit was the leading example. We looked at that and we said, you know, there's a chance we can get Trump elected, that we can stop this seemingly irreversible push towards global governance. And we won. And now they're looking at these 2 elections and say, many people who have never voted before in France, just like we saw in Brexit, just like we saw especially here with Trump, many people are saying, I never believed that anything could be changed. Now they believe that they can change something. What do they need to change? As this was happening, there was violence in the Paris suburbs for a 4th consecutive night. The French police arrested a dozen people amid accusations that police officers had raped and beaten a man that they were detaining. So this set off riots in these areas. Dozens of vehicles and a nursery school were set on fire by youths during standoffs with police in an area of Paris where riots in 2005 drew global attention to the stark contrast between wealthy Paris and the suburbs that surround it, says Reuters. Understand, as I just said, there's a stark contrast that makes things worse in the second generation. So they'll say, well, these people are not immigrants. These are Frenchmen who have grown up here. They were born here, they grew up here, and they never realize how bad the country was that they came from, but they see that they have been ghettoized by their parents' resistance to being assimilated, as I said, because of religious and cultural reasons. They said youths had also used a trolley full of, they put it petrobombs, we would call that Molotov cocktails. So they filled a truck full of Molotov cocktails to set these fires. And as one person said, sadly, these neighborhoods have been turned into ghettos. That's by design, folks. They said in the 2005 riots, 10,000 cars and 300 buildings were set on fire. And this is in the same area where that happened. Meanwhile, a CBS poll, this was reported by New American, finds that 66% of Democrats think that Christianity is as violent as Islam. That's amazing. That's a radical difference between Republicans and Democrats. 2/3 of Democrats believe that Islam breeds no more violence than any other faith. This was a report from Breitbart. Initially, it said only 1 in 7 Democrats believe that Islam is more violent than other religions like Christianity, Mormonism, Judaism, or Buddhism. 1 in 10 Democrats believe that Islam is less violent than other religions. And this was a poll that was just taken February the 1st through February the 2nd. In contrast, Republicans, they say, have a different view of Islam. 63% of Republicans view Islam as aggressive compared to other religions. Let me explain something to you in just one word: martyr. Do you understand the difference in the way martyr is used in Christianity and the way martyr is used in Islam? In Christianity, a martyr was someone who was a witness. That's what the Greek word means, witness. The Roman authorities wanted them to recant their religion, recant what they had seen, recant what they knew. They said no, and they faced death to do it. So they would die rather than deny Christ. That was a Christian martyr. An Islamic martyr is someone who is willing to kill and become a suicidal murderer, a suicidal killer, to kill the unbelievers. You understand the difference? Somebody who says, I know this, I believe it, I will not recant it, even if you kill me, versus somebody who says, I will kill you unless you follow my religion, and I will die doing it if necessary. That's the difference between Islam and Christianity in one word, martyr. It says it all. Now, if we go back to this, where does this idea come from? Of course, it's the meme of the Crusades. And as they point out in the New American article, the Crusades are generally portrayed as an effort by an imperialistic West to convert and to loot a peaceful Muslim world, but they were actually defensive wars against Islam. And as they point out, by 400 AD, Christianity was the dominant religion throughout this area that is now the Middle East and North Africa. But after the birth of Islam, a couple of hundred years later, in 622, Muslim armies went out to conquer Christian lands. And as Thomas Madden, the history department at St. Louis University put it, the Crusades were not the brainchild of an ambitious pope or of rapacious knights, but a response to more than 4 centuries of conquest in which Muslims had already captured 2/3 of the old Christian world. At some point, Christianity as a faith and as a culture had to defend itself or be subsumed by Islam. The Crusades were that defense. And so today what we see is the clash of cultures, the clash of civilizations that have been engineered by the globalist in order to do what they want to, and that is a soft kill of the populations that could resist them in Western Europe and in America. Now we see that in spite of all this, in Germany, we now have the German Migration Agency looking at a backlog that they hope to clear in just a couple of months of 435,000 asylum seekers. You think they're going to vet them to clear that many in just a couple of months? And of course, the head of the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees said her top priorities were to accelerate the process and to Step up integration. Well, good luck with that, okay? Meanwhile, we see that German migration, this is reported by RT, German Migration Agency is vowing to fingerprint all refugees so they can combat benefit fraud. Well, why didn't they vet these people when they first came in? Do you think that I can go and move into Germany and get benefits, or I can go into Switzerland? Of course we can't. But they're allowing these people to come in. It shows that these people are coming as economic refugees. They're not coming in as political refugees. It's a big difference. And you cannot accept unlimited numbers of economic refugees. And this was illustrated by the Cloward and Piven strategy that was put together by some liberal political scientists who said if we bring in enough people, we can cause the system to collapse with this welfare state, and then we can rebuild what we want to do. They say asylum seekers are registered on the basis of their biometric data, including fingerprints. They're given forgery-proof identity documents with that arrival certificate. Really? Then where's your fraud coming from? Top government officials have warned that the ongoing influx of refugees is having a severe impact on Germany's welfare system, and says that the country's asylum policy must be changed in order to alleviate the financial burden. No, it's designed to collapse your country, and that's what it is about to do. Meanwhile, we see in Greece, the EU is facing a crisis. The IMF is warning about explosive Greek debt. That is exactly what it was designed to do. They came up with an economic union, which was to not work, that by design. And then as we see this failing, the solution that is put out there is political integration. Reluctant EU members, they say, led by Poland, are calling for a return to the union's founding principles, asking for a fundamental overhaul of treaties that would return power back to the nation states. And think about this. Just last week, an EU concept paper came out that inflamed people who said we're losing control of our lives to this central bureaucracy. They said this EU concept paper that came out last week said deepen the divisions because it did not contain a single mention of a member state, only EU institutions. That is the point. And we see it happening even in Italy. They had the Italian central bank deputy, as Reuters points out, go on to a radio talk show. And as he was there, caller after caller said, why don't we just get out of the EU? Now, they're not calling for the exit of the European Union, but they don't want to have the common currency. They understand that this hasn't worked for them. Now, we need to know, and we need to understand, and we talked about this as the French are looking at this and saying, look, with Brexit, with Trump, it is possible to stop globalism. We have to stop globalism. We have to stop the consolidation of power to the center. But at some point, we have to look at individual liberty. And we're going to have to work at this at the state level, I think. People are going to have to be concerned enough about their individual liberty to take it back. We're going to have presidents who don't use the Bill of Rights as toilet paper. Is that being too harsh? I want to play for you a clip yesterday where Donald Trump talked to some sheriffs about law enforcement.
But we have to stop crime, right? Would anybody like to make a statement?
Mr. President,
yes, sir.
on the asset forfeiture, we got a state senator in Texas that was talking about introducing legislation to require conviction before we could receive that forfeiture money.
Can you believe that?
And I told him that the cartel would build a monument to him in Mexico if he could get that legislation.
Who's the state senator? Do you want to give his name? We'll destroy his career.
Now, did you hear that? Trump said, can you believe that? What is so amazing about the idea that we would require conviction before we enact a penalty? That is something that we learned after centuries of tyranny. That's why it is enshrined in the Magna Carta. That's why it's enshrined in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. If we're going to stop crime, we have to stop crime being committed by our police departments. Understand what civil asset forfeiture is. Let's translate this. When they say that it's civil, what they're saying is you have no due process. Remember, the Sixth Amendment says in all criminal prosecutions, and it lays out a bunch of protections. They're saying this is not a criminal prosecution. It is a civil prosecution when we steal your property and don't charge you with the crime. So that means that you don't get innocent until proven guilty. You are not confronted with the charges. You don't get a chance to answer your accusers and defend yourself in court with witnesses. You don't even get a chance to be convicted before they apply a penalty. See, and of course, there's no prohibition on excessive fines. So you have a situation where they find somebody smoking a joint on the parent's porch, they confiscate the entire house. How is that equivalent to that? And of course, they try to make this sound as if this is a foreign situation. Look, if you want to stop the cartels, you stop the war on drugs. Look at what happened with marijuana legalization. Once they did that, it made it unprofitable for them to sell marijuana, the cartels. They had to turn into other things. Now they're turning into human trafficking because you created these organized crime syndicates. With your war on drugs, they're turning to something else. They'll continue to commit crimes. But you can stop the war on drugs. You can treat it in a different way. It is not a law enforcement issue. Let's look at this. Civil asset forfeiture. What they're saying is you have no due process. The assets, that's your property, they're going to forfeit it. Well, that's nothing but theft by government. So understand, government is going to steal your property with no due process. That's really what this is about. Conservatives need to understand where the war on drugs came from. It is a UN agenda, just like Agenda 21. They created it. They created the schedules. They put all the drugs in the schedules. And then Richard Nixon enacted it 10 years after the UN created it. That's what it is. It is destroying our country's legal system. It is corrupting our institutions, and it is taking away our individual liberties. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In case you haven't heard, InfoWars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. And now we are proud to announce a new weapon in the epic battle against the Globalist. InfoWars Prime, where you can watch live high-definition feeds of The Alex Jones Show, plus exclusive insider videos from the InfoWars crew and behind-the-scenes action. Go to Infowars.com/app and download today. InfoWars Prime is available right now for your iPhone or Android. You will have access to exclusive videos that you can't see anywhere else. And that means live coverage of events and breaking news on location as it happens. You can also take advantage of amazing deals from the InfoWars store that are only available for InfoWars Prime subscribers. That's InfoWars Prime at Infowars.com/app. And if you can hear my voice, you are the resistance.